There is a rhythm to history, a soundless drum that beats beneath every empire's triumphs and every nation's fall. Sometimes it's drowned out by the roar of prosperity, by the clinking of coins and the thunder of armies, but the rhythm never stops, and when it quickens, collapse follows. For 5 centuries, that rhythm has played the same melody, 7 distinct notes that echo through Spain, Britain, the Soviet Union, and now, in 2025, it reverberates through the United States. Each superpower believed it was different. Each believed it could outspend, outfight, and outpromise the mathematics of decline. Each marched, step by step, into the same abyss. The pattern begins not with defeat on a battlefield, but with exhaustion disguised as triumph. An empire stretches across the world, bases, borders, debts, and dreams. Its people believe the reach of its flag is proof of eternal strength, but history knows better. Empires don't die in sudden explosions, they die in whispers, the soft cracking of a foundation under too much weight.
The first whisper came from Spain in the late 1500s. The richest empire the world had ever seen, its galleons heavy with silver from the New World, its armies feared from Manila to Madrid. Spain thought it had discovered the secret to infinite wealth. If you control the world's money, the world obeys you. But gold and silver are cruel teachers. They make nations forget how to produce, how to build, how to sustain. When wealth flows like a river, no one asks where the source will run dry. By 1590, King Philip II ruled half the known world. He was a monarch of marble halls and endless wars, a man who believed divine right could outrun arithmetic. Stage 1 began quietly. Military overextension. From the Mediterranean to the Low Countries, from the Caribbean to the Pacific, Spanish troops fought on 4 continents. Every victory cost more than it won. Half the empire's revenue vanished into the mouths of cannons and the salaries of men who bled for a crown they would never see.
Stage 2 followed inevitably: currency debasement. When the treasury emptied, Spain turned to alchemy, mixing copper with silver, pretending the alloy still held the same worth. Merchants knew better. Soon, a Spanish coin was worth less than the metal that framed it. Inflation devoured the empire's harvests, and faith in money, once as solid as silver, melted into suspicion. Debt followed like a shadow. By 1557, Spain defaulted on its loans. Then again, and again. 4 bankruptcies in 40 years. Each time the court announced reforms. Each time they returned to the same addiction: borrowing tomorrow's gold to pay yesterday's promises. Stage 4. Loss of productive capacity. Why build when you can buy? Why till the soil when ships can bring grain from afar? The nobility sneered at work. Craftsmen closed their shutters. Spain became a corridor for wealth, not a creator of it. Silver arrived by sea and departed just as quickly, to Italian bankers, to Dutch shipyards, to French merchants. The empire glittered outwardly, but rotted inwardly. A cathedral of marble built on hollow stone.
Stage 5. Social decay. The markets emptied, the universities quieted, and the streets filled with beggars. The brightest minds fled north, to Amsterdam, to London, where new ideas about trade and credit began to bloom. Spain, once master of the seas, became a museum of its own arrogance. By 1650, the empire's map was still vast, but its pulse had faded. The world's superpower
had become a ghost of wealth. Centuries later, Britain would inherit Spain's illusion. At the dawn of the 20th century, the British Empire stretched so far that the sun, as they boasted, never set upon it. London was the beating heart of global finance, the pound sterling the lifeblood of international trade. Every ship that crossed an ocean carried Britain's flag or Britain's debt. But the pattern had already begun to stir beneath the surface. Stage 1 again. Military overextension. A fleet on every horizon, garrisons in every hemisphere. The empire had to defend India, Africa, the Middle East, the Pacific, an impossible geography of pride. And when the Great War arrived in 1914, Britain faced a terrible choice: remain cautious or wager the empire on one more crusade. They chose to fight. $40 billion later, trillions in today's measure, the empire won the war, but mortgaged its future to America's credit. Stage 2. Currency strain. Gold drained from the vaults of the Bank of England, shipped overseas to pay for bullets and bread. By 1925, desperate to appear unbroken, Britain returned to the gold standard at its pre-war value, an act of pride masquerading as stability. The result was economic strangulation. Factories closed, unemployment soared. The pound's illusion of strength became a burden too heavy to bear. By 1931, the curtain dropped. Britain abandoned gold, its currency falling overnight. The global reserve currency had confessed its weakness. Stage 3, the debt spiral, was merciless. Another war came, another mountain of loans. When the guns fell silent in 1945, Britain's debt exceeded its entire GDP. The empire that had ruled the waves could no longer afford the tide. Stage 4, loss of empire. India, gone. Then Africa, then the Caribbean. Within a generation, the map turned from imperial red to the pale gray of independence. Stage 5, currency collapse. The pound slid decade after decade until the world's reserve became a regional relic. Britain kept its throne in the United Nations, kept its accent of prestige, but everyone understood the empire was gone. Its monuments remained, its power did not. And then the 20th century's most ideologically driven empire rose, the Soviet Union. Forged from revolution, baptized in steel, and convinced that history itself had chosen its side. From 1945 to 1991, it mirrored the same arc with chilling precision.
Stage 1, military overreach. 15 to 20% of GDP poured into the army, the navy, the nuclear race. An empire built on fear rather than faith, compelled to match America tank for tank, missile for missile, ideology for ideology. The cost hollowed out the state. Stage 2, economic stagnation. Factories became mausoleums of inefficiency. Innovation froze under the weight of control. By the 1980s, the USSR imported grain it should have grown itself. Stage 3, currency collapse. The ruble was a mirage, valuable only inside a system that demanded belief. When oil prices fell and gold reserves ran thin, the illusion shattered.
Stage 4, loss of empire. The Berlin Wall cracked, and the satellites, Poland, Hungary, East Germany, spun away like broken planets from a dying sun. Stage 5, collapse. No invasion, no war, just an implosion of faith and finance. A superpower vanished in 900 days. 3 empires, 3 autopsies, 1 pattern. And now, as the camera pans across the skyline of 21st century America, The aircraft carriers, the skyscrapers, the digital wealth flickering across screens, the rhythm grows louder again. The United States has already crossed 5 of the 7 stages.
The story is not over, but the echoes are unmistakable.
There is a stillness before every storm. A deceptive calm where the streets glow with neon, the markets hum, and citizens believe prosperity is eternal. That's where America stands now. Not in chaos, but in comfort. The kind of comfort that history has always punished. The empire doesn't feel like it's collapsing, but neither did Spain, nor Britain, nor the USSR until it was already too late. The pattern always begins the same way. Stage 1. Military overextension. The United States maintains over 750 military bases across 80 countries, a global web of steel and diplomacy. Troops in 150 nations, trillions spent across decades in deserts, mountains, and oceans. A map of commitments that circles the earth. To the untrained eye, it looks like dominance. To history, it looks like exhaustion. Like Spain in the 1500s, like Britain in 1914, America's power stretches farther than its ability to sustain it. Every war is billed as necessary. Every deployment, temporary. Every treaty, strategic. But strategy becomes strain when promises multiply faster than resources. The empire spends more on defense than the next 10 countries combined. $850 billion a year, yet its soldiers rely on outdated equipment. Recruitment numbers are falling, and the public's faith in endless war has evaporated. If China moves on Taiwan, if Russia crosses NATO's borders, if Iran closes the Strait of Hormuz, the U.S. would face simultaneous crises it cannot fully answer. That's what overextension looks like. Power projected so far outward that the core begins to crack. Stage 2. Currency debasement. When a nation can no longer tax enough to fund its ambitions, it turns to the oldest trick in the imperial book: printing promises. In 1971, President Nixon closed the gold window. The dollar became untethered from any physical standard, free to float, free to inflate. Since then, the supply of dollars has exploded more than 400%. Between 2020 and 2022 alone, the U.S. printed over $6 trillion, an ocean of liquidity that flooded the world, then receded, leaving inflation in its wake. The dollar, once a mirror of gold's stability, now mirrors every government whim. It buys less each decade, but Americans pretend it buys the same. A silent tax extracted from every saver, every worker, every retiree. Spain diluted its silver with copper. America dilutes its value with digits. Different mechanism, same result. When money loses its anchor, society loses its compass. The rules that once governed thrift, production, and restraint dissolve into an illusion of endless credit. Stage 4. The debt spiral. The United States owes $36 trillion, 120% of GDP. The interest alone nears $1 trillion a year. That's more than the annual defense budget, more than the education budget, more than what any previous empire ever paid just to stand still. Each year, the government borrows more to pay interest on yesterday's borrowing. Deficits persist even during peacetime, even during economic growth.
This is not investment, it's inertia, the motion of a machine that can't stop because stopping means collapse. Spain defaulted 4 times. Britain borrowed itself into dependency. The USSR ran out of real money. And now America, borrowing not for conquest, but for comfort. The debt spiral is invisible to most. It hides behind rising stock charts and housing bubbles, behind the illusion of wealth printed into existence. But history's math is unforgiving. Every empire that borrows faster than it produces eventually learns the same arithmetic. Interest compounds faster than hope. Stage 5. Loss of productive capacity. The factories that built America's strength, the steel mills, the shipyards, the textile plants, are now museums or parking lots. Production moved abroad, traded for cheaper labor and higher profits. Today, the U.S. imports $800 billion more than it exports each year. Even its own weapons, electronics, and medicine rely on foreign components. It is a digital empire that designs but does not build, that consumes but does not craft. Spain had silver. America has the dollar. Both served as global currencies that bought obedience until the mines dried up, until the world stopped believing. When supply chains fracture, when trade partners hedge, when the flow of dollars reverses, the shelves go empty, the machines go silent, and a nation realizes how fragile modern prosperity truly is. Stage 5. Social decay. Every collapse ends where the numbers meet the human soul. Trust fades. Neighbors turn inward. Institutions rot from within. In America, trust in government, media, and corporations has plunged to historic lows. Crime rises in once stable cities. Homelessness spreads beneath glass towers of record profits. 100,000 citizens die yearly from drug overdoses, a modern plague of desperation. Fertility drops below replacement. Families fracture. The public grows numb. Rome had its circuses. Spain had its priests. The USSR had its propaganda. America has the endless scroll. An empire distracted to death. The best and brightest either leave or retreat into digital kingdoms of escapism. What's left are bureaucracies without vision, leaders without courage, and citizens who no longer believe they share a future. Stage 5. Complete. 5 check marks on the ledger of decline. The Soviet Union collapsed at 5. Britain at 5. Spain endured longer, but the trajectory was the same. Now the United States stands at the brink of Stage 6, the most dangerous stage of all, the loss of its reserve currency status. Already, the signs flicker like warning lights across the world.
History never warns with sirens. It whispers, through markets, through alliances, through the quiet rearranging of global trust. And if you listen closely, you can hear it now. The dull hum of a world beginning to move away from the dollar. Stage 6. The loss of reserve currency status. For nearly 80 years, the US dollar has been more than money. It has been power. It was the invisible empire that conquered where armies could not. Every barrel of oil, every shipload of goods, every international loan, all flowed through green paper stamped with American faith. When the dollar was trusted, America could live beyond its means, spending trillions while others saved, consuming while others produced. But reserve status is not a birthright. It's a vote of confidence from the rest of the world, renewed every day, quietly, by foreign banks and central bankers who must still believe in the myth of stability. And that belief is cracking. Across the East, the BRICS nations are building alternatives. China and Russia trade in yuan and rubles. Saudi Arabia, once bound to Washington by oil, now accepts yuan for crude. Central banks around the world buy record amounts of gold, hedging against a future where the dollar is no longer king. Trade deals once denominated in dollars are now signed in regional currencies. Each act is small, each headline feels harmless, but together they form the slow-motion landslide of de-dollarization. When that faith breaks completely, the consequences won't unfold gradually. It will happen all at once, like the snapping of a cable that held the weight of a mountain. Because when the dollar loses its throne, it doesn't just fall abroad, it floods back home. Trillions of unwanted dollars will return to American shores. Prices will surge as every foreign-held note seeks refuge in real goods, land, houses, resources. Inflation won't be a statistic. It will be a fever. And the debt, already unpayable, will spiral into the absurd. The same currency that once bought the world will buy nothing it once commanded. This is how Stage 6 begins. Quietly, invisibly, like Spain's silver running out of mines, like Britain's gold leaving its vaults, like rubles losing worth in the black markets of Moscow. History never changes its handwriting. And once Stage 6 starts, Stage 7 follows with cruel precision. Stage 7. Collapse. Not decline, not gradual erosion, collapse. An empire rarely sees its final day coming. The Soviet Union vanished in 900 days from superpower to memory. Britain's empire dissolved within 2 decades. Spain's took longer, but the end was the same. A once mighty force reduced to nostalgia. America, for now, still glitters. The dollar still buys. The military still dominates. The markets still climb. But so did every empire right before the fall. The illusion of strength is always the strongest just before the collapse. Here's how it happens. A currency crisis triggers a debt crisis, which ignites a political crisis. Faith evaporates overnight. Markets freeze. The government scrambles for control, printing more money to fill the void, fueling the very fire it tries to extinguish. Pensions, savings, wages, all reprice in chaos. The world, once eager to lend, stops lending. The military, starved of funding, contracts. Allies drift. Enemies advance. It doesn't happen gracefully. It happens suddenly. In Spain, the bankruptcy notices arrived one after another. In Britain, the pound fell faster than any government could respond. In the USSR, wages stopped arriving and soldiers walked home. Every collapse began with denial. It can't happen here. And everyone ended with the same revelation. It always can. The illusion of exceptionalism. Each empire told itself the same comforting story. Spain said, "We have gold." Britain said, "We have industry." The USSR said, "We have ideology." America says, "We have technology and the dollar." But patterns don't bow to pride. They bow only to math. You cannot spend forever beyond your means. You cannot maintain an empire without production. You cannot debase your currency without consequence. You cannot escape the final stages once the first 5 are complete. The sequence is locked in. The only unknown is timing. Maybe 10 years, maybe 5, maybe less. The signs are already visible. Debt soaring, productivity falling, society fracturing, faith eroding. The pattern isn't theoretical. It's measurable. It's written in charts, in deficits, in history books. The reckoning. Since 2020, America has accelerated through each stage, printed trillions, expanded commitments, deepened divisions, hollowed its production. The empire is not walking the path, it's sprinting down it. And somewhere in the near distance, the echo of the final drumbeat waits. When it sounds, the transformation will be swift. The world's superpower will become a cautionary tale. The reserve currency, a regional one. The empire, a memory whispered through documentaries and textbooks. But perhaps this time could be different. Perhaps reform could arrive before the reckoning. Perhaps leadership could restrain what history has always let run wild. Perhaps awareness itself could delay the inevitable. History offers little optimism on that front, but hope is the one currency that has never collapsed. Narrator's closing reflection. If this story unsettles you, it should, not because the fall of America is inevitable, but because every empire before it thought the same thing. The sequence is there for anyone willing to see it. Spain, Britain, the Soviet Union. 3 variations of the same song. And now a 4th verse begins. The question isn't if the pattern will repeat, it's how we'll respond when it does. The answers aren't hidden in the future. They're carved into the past. And if we study them closely enough, maybe, just maybe, we'll learn how to stop the rhythm before the final note plays.